wealth junkies are ruining America. What can we do about it? Or my headline was, are billionaires simply money addicts like Scrooge McDuck? And, you know, the point that I'm making, we've got all these Republicans who are just going out of their way to screw working class people. In Ohio, you know, there's a ballot measure to the minimum wage in Ohio is $10.54 or 45 cents an hour. There's a ballot measure that people are trying to get on the ballot in Ohio. They need 400,000+ signatures. And it would raise the minimum wage to $15 an hour over a 2-year period. The Republicans have come out and said, well, and that would include tipped workers, by the way. So the Republicans have come out with their own version, which was, it turns out, written by the restaurant industry, that says that, yeah, we'll raise the minimum wage to $15, but it's going to take 4 years, and it doesn't include tipped workers. Tipped workers only go to $7.50 an hour. Bernie Moreno, the Republican candidate for the U.S. Senate against Sherrod Brown in Ohio, was recently forced by a court to pay $400,000 in wages that he had stolen. I mean, he was literally convicted of wage theft, stolen from employees at his used car business. And he says he doesn't think there should be any minimum wage at all. In Florida, Ron DeSantis just signed a bill into law, a Republican bill that forbids cities in the state from mandating that employers provide outdoor workers with heat protections, including water. Again, the legislation written by agricultural industry lobbyists. It also scales back child labor protections and forbids cities from instituting their own safeguards for children in the workplace. In Iowa, a Republican majority wiped out public employees' right to collectively bargain. You know, it was signed by that state's Republican governor with a new twist, mimicking a rule that DeSantis put into place in Florida, making it illegal for the state to automatically deduct union wages, union dues, from state workers' paychecks. These efforts are just the tiniest tip of the iceberg. Anti-worker legislation, tax cuts, I mean, all this stuff is just happening all over the country, which raises the question, why? Is it that Republicans just hate working class people? Is it they think that working class people just aren't worthy and therefore, you know, it's okay to just exploit them? I think, you know, if you look at what's going on, basically the billionaires in America, or the majority of the billionaires in America, own the GOP. And the businesses in America own the GOP. Republican politicians, I mean, basically this is the deal they made. The Democratic Party has been the party of labor since the 1930s. You know, when Franklin Roosevelt legalized unions in 1933 with the Wagner Act, the National Labor Relations Act, and have been ever since. And as Harry Truman famously said, you know, the Republican Party is the party of wealth and privilege, always has been and always will be. Well, it hasn't always been. I mean, there was about a 15-year period there when they were actually the party of you know, bringing together white and black people. This was the party of Abraham Lincoln. That all went to hell in 1876 when Sam Tilden was elected president, or was given the presidency by Congress, actually. Rutherford B. Hayes was elected president. Sam Tilden actually won that election, but Hayes became, the Republican Hayes, the Democrat Tilden, the Republican Hayes became president. Because of that deal to stab black people in the back, you know, to end Reconstruction in 1876. Since 1876, the GOP has been the party of big business and billionaires, right straight through. So what's going on here? Well, science shows that acquiring wealth stimulates the pleasure and reward circuits in the brain's ventromedial prefrontal cortex, just behind the eyes, that part of the brain. Studies that map blood flow and electrical activity show that even anticipating money lights up this region, which is the same response that you get to anticipating sex or anticipating food. So, you know, I remember this was, I think 2 years ago, a woman called into the program. I was talking about wealth at the time, and she called in and she said that she had always been kind of a paycheck to paycheck person. But she had had a recent life circumstance that meant that she was no longer financially insecure. I don't recall what it was. I think she might have gotten an inheritance. But now she has more money than she needs. And she said, and I find myself checking my bank balance every day. I never did that before. And it's like this kind of Scrooge McDuck phenomena. She seemed troubled by this. And you know, probably because, you know, Jesus was pretty explicit. You know, he said, you know, the rich man came to Jesus and said, what do I do to get into heaven? And he said, sell everything you own, and give the money to the poor. And then, you can join me in heaven. And the guy said, screw that. So, not exactly a billionaire or CEO's mantra, right? So what I'm arguing is that the morbidly rich in our country are constantly seeking this dopamine rush that you get from adding another $1 million or another $1 billion to your checking account. And that they're willing to destroy American democracy, and they're willing to destroy the American middle class in order to get that dopamine rush. Now, we have a word for this. When, people use heroin, for example, or cocaine or methamphetamine, they very often end up destroying their own families because they're just, or alcohol. Alcohol is another one. These people are addicts. And dopamine is the indirect drug. I mean, all of these drugs produce dopamine rushes. And it's an addiction. And now that 5 corrupt Republicans on the Supreme Court have legalized political bribery, these billionaires have just been reaching out to the Republicans and saying, make us richer, make us richer, make us richer, and we'll keep you in power. So what do we do about this? Well, from the 1930s to the 1980s, we used a top income tax bracket of between 74 and 90% to keep the wealth junkies from damaging the rest of us. It was sort of like giving a heroin addict methadone. You can have money, you can be rich, but you can't have so much money that you can blast yourself into outer space on penis-shaped rockets and buy, multiple 500-foot yachts. You can be rich, you can be really rich, but not, over-the-top rich. And, of course, Ronald Reagan and George W. Bush and Donald Trump did away with those things, and that's why we're $35 trillion in debt, was because of these 3 tax breaks, or tax cuts. So what I'm saying is, if we want to stop the damage that these wealth addicts are doing to America, the way that we need to do that is by bringing back that top 74% income tax bracket on money earned over $5 million a year, and reverse Citizens United, end legal bribery of politicians in America. I think it's pretty straightforward stuff. We have, the Reagan administration and the Reagan Revolution and the Supreme Court, following on from that, basically gave billionaires the power to have all the junk they want, right? And I mean, like junkies, right? It's like saying to a heroin addict, here's a kilo of heroin, enough to last your lifetime. Have fun. This is what the Supreme Court did, and we need to reverse it.